join me as I dive into the new definition of dyslexia. So, there's a new definition of dyslexia from the International Dyslexia Association. And this new definition really makes me excited because this is much broader, and it also is beginning to recognize all the things that go into reading. So I've talked before about how the special ed world and the general literacy world are often at odds, and it's really not good for anyone when that happens. There's a brain-based camp where they think everything is based on the brain, and there's more of a literacy-based camp where you focus more on instruction, and there's more of a kind of an environmental aspect to it. And the truth, of course, is that both are influential. But there's been kind of this butting of heads between these two camps. Again, traditionally dyslexia was thought to be just brain-based, and it had a very narrow view of reading. And this definition is much broader, and it incorporates a lot more. So I think this is a really, really good thing. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So this definition was created by a huge range of people, and it wasn't just special educators. It was speech therapists, other kinds of therapists, and it was also global. Literacy experts. Traditionally, dyslexia has not included other languages. Definition of dyslexia and the treatment for dyslexia has not included other languages and cultures. So it included people from around the world. It had people from Latin America. It had people from Asia. Chinese University of Hong Kong was very influential in this. So again, that's really, really awesome that there's such a huge variety of viewpoints, and to me it really points to a very helpful future for reading. And the literacy camp can really learn from neurobiology as well, which is something that is needed in the literacy world. So I'm really I'm pleased about the panel they had. It's just a really broad panel, and it includes a lot of different research, both on the brain and on other things. So some of the highlights of this new definition, first of all, is that it incorporates other languages, and so it recognizes that in languages other than English, particularly languages that have a different alphabet system or don't have an alphabet system, that use something like characters like Chinese, that the struggle to read on a word level, in other words, sounding out words is on a word level is affected more by visual cues. So what you might call morphology, or how the elements are put together. In this case, the characters are put together. That's a huge thing because Chinese is the biggest language of the world. There are people who speak Arabic, Korean has a different alphabet, so it's including these, recognizing that the English sound system is not the only system in the world, and that reading difficulties may look different based on the language. It also expands the definition to word level problems. So what I mean by that is, it used to be just decoding that children have difficulty sounding out words. Now it includes accuracy, which means saying the words correctly, and speed. So if a child struggles against saying words at a word level, not reading a whole paragraph, but just at the word level, that is included in this definition. And that's pretty historical. Then that's just something I did not expect. The other thing that is really phenomenal about this definition is that for the first time it mentions environmental factors. So it is very thorough, and what it is saying is that there's both environmental and genetic factors that can cause reading problems, in this case dyslexia, which again is just word level. There are lots of other reading problems, but that's huge that has been recognized, because generally speaking, again, this has been thought to be just brain related, and there's been this thought that can't do a whole lot to either prevent this, you just have to kind of wait and then treat it. And now they're saying no. So the definition focuses particularly own oral language. So what has been found in research is that oral language skills really predict reading ability. And this is really monumental. So we have research that shows that oral language is related to reading skills. Pretty strong research. So in 1978, again, really old research, Hart and Risley were two researchers who did a really big research study in the Kansas City area where they studied the differences in language use among families that were on welfare, generally very poor families who were working class, and families that were professionals. And what they found was these families that were on welfare, particularly, had very low levels of oral language use. In other words, the talk that was given to the children was very short, and there wasn't a whole lot of variation in language use, and that has to do with education. People who are on welfare or who are struggling financially often have very low levels of education. So these families didn't interact with their children as much, again, and that sometimes has to do with stress as well. Many of these families are working very hard, they didn't have extra time to devote to their children and so forth. But anyway, it found that in these families, the breadth of language, the amount of language used was much, much lower than these professional families. And it really gives an explanation, at least in part, for the socioeconomic gap in education, why richer kids do better than kids who don't have a lot of money. Really monumental work. It actually influenced a lot of early reading programs and a lot of preschool programs because it really showed that early education matters and oral language use matters. And so we've known this since 1978. It is not new. But that was only considered when we talk about comprehension and vocabulary. This is the first time I've ever seen it talked about with decoding and word level accuracy. So that is huge. We also know from linguistics, again, another field that needs to be included in this discussion that's often been overlooked, that children need a lot of oral language when they're young, or they won't get it when they're older. And if you ever talk to a deaf educator, this is often a problem in deaf education. Deaf children have trouble reading, and it's not at all because they have limited capacity or there's something innate about students who are deaf that makes them not be able to read. It's because many times, unless those students are raised in families that are also deaf or who sign, they don't get enough language because they can't hear their parents. And so they come to school with just really low levels of language. In second language acquisition, we have what's called a threshold hypothesis, which is that there has to be adequate oral language in the first language to influence the second, which is a big issue in many schools. Because children of immigrants, children who speak a different language at home often don't get enough of that input. So we have all this evidence, but this is the first time that it's been applied to word level problems, what's traditionally called dyslexia. So this is really fascinating to me. I would like to dig into this research a little bit more, and I might in the next few weeks dig into this research, but ultimately this is just really, to me, phenomenal news and phenomenal work, and I really appreciate these researchers who have created this definition. It's very thorough, it's very inclusive, and it really gives me hope about the future of reading education, that we will be able to have programs and have systems that will not only treat reading problems but will prevent it. And that's mentioned in the statement as well, that this new research could be used to potentially prevent dyslexia and word level problems through early intervention, through programs that help children to acquire oral language specifically, so they could use that to read. So putting the links to both the PowerPoint that explains the